There was a land the rain and sun had left so lush and green. The fields were thick with grass and trod by cows and sheep, and the streets were full of kids, and the skies replete with stars. And the citizens had private lives, and the towns had public bars. But there were flags atop each telephone pole, and a busy little worm in the heart of the apple. There was a hairline fracture in the gable wall that would soon enough see the whole house fall.
I survive. You know, I survive and I keep going. You have to heal as well as you can. You have to be strong. But if I think of her, I find I can't remember back before she died. There's a block there. It's like a shutter just came down that night. There's nothing. The picture in my head's a photograph my mother kept. Or else I'm left with that last image from the morgue. Her body laid beneath the sheet. I've tried, but no. It's like a key was turned in me the night she died. There came that knocking at the door, and from then on in, nothing was like anything that came before.
We were allowed to sort of go up and down the street, even at a very young age. The very earliest memory was coming home from school at lunchtime, and I wasn't able to reach the table. And my daddy was sitting behind me reading the newspaper, and he said, "What's that in your leg?" And I says, "Oh, the teacher had slapped me because I'd asked to go to the toilet." So I told him, and I was afraid to tell him, because in those days, if you get hit in school, you get hit at home too, because you didn't get it for nothing, sort of. So he says, "Right," and he got up and he put his hat on and he took me by the hand and he walked me up the street. I didn't say anything. And we got to the school and he knocked at the teacher's door. And he says, "Dear, do you know who I am?" And she says, "I do, you're Mr. Delaney." He says, "That's right, and this is my daughter. And don't you ever lift your hand or ruler or anything else to her again, because I'll get you struck off. You'll never teach another child again, you know." And I was 5 then, so from that day on, he was my hero, I suppose. He was quiet man, like, you know, but just well respected, and he was strict too, you know. He would have been strict by us at times, like, as well. I suppose when there's 9 of us, you had to be. We had a house, the house was rented. My dad had a car. We had always good holidays. I don't think we missed out on anything. I didn't feel as if I did anyway. I don't know what my father's politics were, to be honest with you. It wasn't something that would have been discussed in the house, or, like, wouldn't have had a vote, so he didn't vote. Because it wouldn't have been, you know, that's the way it was in those days.
This is Londonderry, a largely Protestant city and a place where Catholics are denied the vote in local elections and are subject to arrest and imprisonment without trial. They're also denied opportunities in employment. There is a growing movement for equal rights, and thousands of people are willing to demonstrate in the streets to force legislative changes.
When you was civil rights, the people were looking for jobs and houses. People didn't have proper housing in there at that time. There was tenement buildings and at the bottom of our street that families lived in.
Towards the end of 1968, civil rights agitation grew fiercer.
Catholics in Ulster were demanding equal rights. Loyalists were determined to resist. Within months, Derry's Bogside area had become a cockpit of resistance. And as the pressure mounted, the leaders of the civil rights movement appealed for non-violent protest.
It was a bit scary, but scary and exciting. There was riots every Saturday, it seemed. It always ended up on our street because of where we were situated, sort of at the edge of the bog. The noise used to be desperate, and the smell of smoke, and the roaring and shouting. And I used to go into the back room of the house, and sort of lie there and put the radio up high so I couldn't hear anything. It was 1969, it was the 19th of April. And we went to the cinema. There was normally a children's cinema on at 10 in the morning. So we went, me and Jim. And coming back then, there started to gather, people were starting to gather in the street, for a march. So we were kind of trying to get home quick. My sister Mina was babysitting, and he was looking out for her. And the riots had started at the bottom of the street. So I kept going out to the door and looking down the street. So my daddy kept saying to me to go on, to go inside. And the next thing, there was like a rumble. And the living room door flew open, and there were heads bobbing down our hall, loads of people. And screaming and shouting. And I looked out the window, and the next thing I seen the police arriving and running to the door to try and get in. The day of it, the rioters ran into the house, and Daddy tried to close the front door. But the police got a plank and smashed the door apart and gave him what for. 8 of them with batons. They gave him a beating, a real hiding. He lifted the coal shovel to protect his head, and by the end the metal was all dented. Our neighbour Freddie lay on 3 of us children to protect us as well as he could, and when he got up, I saw Daddy there on the carpet, drenched in blood. I couldn't look. I ran out, and a policeman carrying a blackthorn stick coming into the hall. An inspector, and he inspected me. And I him. And then he turned on his heel sharply and walked out again. Mommy was in bed sick that day, but she got up when she heard the racket. I ran past her. I ran up the stairs past her, and she said, "What's happened? What's happened? Where's your dad?" And I said, "He's in the living room, but he's dead. He's in the living room, but he's dead." And I started walking up to the top floor, to our bedrooms, and there was a whole lot of men in the rooms. And they were saying, "Oh, dear, that wee girl's hit, she's hurt." And they set me down, and they were looking to see where had been hit, my head and that, but I hadn't been hit. I was just covered in Freddie Bud's blood. He had a busted head, so all the blood was over us, me and Danny and Jim. So then my brother came upstairs and told the men to get out. And I says to my dad, he's dead. He says, no, he's not. So I went downstairs before my daddy was taken away, and he was lying on the sofa and that, and he was going in and out of consciousness. And I put his hand out to me, and he was covered in blood. And I just ran away. I couldn't cope with it, ran back up the stairs. And so they took him away. And Kathy went too, and she had been battered really badly. She was only 16. The place was covered in blood, and we were trying to clean it up, and it was mostly cleaned up, that night. But there was blood on all of the walls, it was bad.
They used batons at all times. The only time they used their fists was on me, and they didn't mark me then, was when I was lying on top of my daddy. He's still in hospital, and he has head injuries. He has 22 stitches in his head. His eye, this eye's blackened, and the bridge of his nose, where he was wearing glasses, when they kicked him. They must have kicked him in the mouth, because they split his dentures right down the middle.
His teeth?
Yeah. And these
what about his
glasses,
glasses?
look at the blood in those.
Blood? Yeah.
That's blood completely over the glass in those. And that's it. We don't know where the rest of it is.
Yeah.
We were sent up to my Uncle Jim's house in Tull. Things settled down. So I went to school and then come back down to the house to see how things were every day. And the Monday, my daddy wasn't there, and Tuesday wasn't there, and the Wednesday was there. I just stood at the door looking at him, and his fist was badly swollen, his eyes, and he wouldn't have recognised him, and he just nodded out to me, and I just nodded to him, And then my daddy went up to bed, and the next thing I heard this terrible noise from downstairs, and like a moaning noise, and it was awful. And as it turned out, it was my daddy taking a massive heart attack, and he died before they got the doctor to him, before they got a priest to him or anything. He didn't see any of our grandchildren. He didn't walk any of us up the aisle. He wasn't there for all them important things. And I'd say he would have loved the grandchildren, and he would have loved sort of all that stuff, because he loved family life, He's a family man.
A lovely child, Feroza was a lovely child a long time ago. A wicked fairy cast a spell, cast a spell, cast a spell. A wicked fairy cast a spell a long time ago.
It starts at a table in the kitchen, a few people drinking tea and voicing opposition to the usual unfairness, the corruption, the dishonesty. A meeting, a steering committee, a march that marches through the city, and thousands of us scattering when the police go in with batons. A backlash, a crackdown.
We didn't get any counselling or anything. My mummy was our counsellor at the time. And at a very early stage, she knew we were never getting justice for this. She knew that they were going to, look after one another, which they did do. So she was sort of saying to us, We're getting on with our lives, and we're putting this behind us because that's what we have to do. You're not going to be, waste your life on it.
The beginning of limited war, of days that whiten into years, of a blankness, a kind of fog, and each night the new score of more damage and more dead.
People in the Catholic area known as the Bogside resisted the police with petrol bombs in savage street warfare. As the situation worsened, it became clear that the Catholics had lost all faith in the fairness of the Ulster police. So the British government authorised the use of a peacekeeping force of troops in Northern Ireland.
When they first arrived, the army, people accepted them. They were glad to see them because there was terrible riots the 12th of August and people were afraid, so they were glad to see the army coming on the streets, and at the beginning people were friendly with them.
When the British Army came into Northern Ireland, my mother and a lot of our neighbours brought them in for tea. And in our house on a Christmas Eve, it was always new cushion covers, new mat, and all the rest of it. And the soldiers were brought in on Christmas Eve and fed. And everybody looked out for them. When I look back, of course, they were children. They mightn't have been any more than 17, 18. But they came in and got their cup of tea and maybe a wee toddy and a sandwich or whatever. Especially Christmas Eve, they got a turkey sandwich or a bowl of soup or, But they were somebody's children and they weren't home for Christmas. But then tensions got really high and we had to stop bringing the soldiers in. Not only us, every neighbour. It had to stop. We were aware then of how bad things had got.
Every time a new regiment came in, everybody's house got raided, including ours. And my mum would say to them, why you're coming in here? And we didn't do anything. And they would say, well, you're an end house and we have to raid all the end houses. If they had raided the house, they would say, God, I didn't know you with your clothes on. And then people would have thought, are you going with a soldier or are you, things like that. And called you gypsy and called you slag and, just lots of abuse, like. Everywhere you went, you were stopped and searched. If you were going to the centre of town, you had to open your bag. But then they brought on civilian searchers where that was worse because, nobody had any respect for them at all because they searched, from top to bottom. If you had a child in the pram, that was searched. It was horrible, like. It was a bad atmosphere, but you just got on with it, Yeah, it became part of your life.
If you went downtown into the city centre, it could have got very scary, which had done. You could have been in a shop and had to get out. There was a bomb scare. You would have heard rioting. You would have had to run. But again, you didn't know how bad it was. You were a child. You weren't aware of how bad it was. You just knew that you couldn't be there. You had to get away from there. Fear of a subject, fear of an object, fear of a box or a bag unattended, fear of a car left up on the pavement, fear of the quiet turned suddenly loud, fear of the street turned upside down, fear of being in town and having to run, fear of being caught up in the crowd, fear of them giving the wrong information, fear of the crowd becoming a riot, fear of the time gone wrong in the place, fear of a device and its thirst for silence, fear for a cause, fear of physical force. I came from a family of 4 brothers and myself. I was the youngest of the 5. My father was an ex-sergeant major in the TA. He was a very strict man. Very, very strict. He was very tough on the boys. If you didn't do what you were told to do, you got a thump. And he did thump. That was the only good thing about being a girl. I didn't get any. The fellas got it. You didn't get affection. Maybe had a slap and told you to get on with it. If you fell in the street and came on with a cut, you get a slap. How do you do that? Bang. You know, there was no hugging you to tell you you were loved, or there was none of that. None of that. Winston was a very bubbly, very affectionate fella. He used to bring home on a Thursday night a bar milk tray of chocolate for me and my mother, and we would have lay in her bed, waiting on him coming in with it. But he could have come home with a dog, or a bird, or he could have any stray animal he brought home. His photo was put in the paper years and years ago for a wee bird that he found in the ground dying, and he brought it home and nursed it back to life. And he let it go again.
Internment was a failure, both in political and military terms. It became a burning civil rights issue, and on Sunday the 30th of January, an anti-internment march left Derry's Craigan estate for the city centre.
That was a massive march. But there was a lot of army around, and I was really nervous, you know, that day. So we were at the front of the march. When we got to Craigan Street, I was all, no, I'm not doing this. I'm too scared. There's something's going to happen. So my mammy was all, no, that's us now, we're going. So we cut across West Ground to go home. And we just got on the door, and my mammy was putting on tea. And she called my grand out. She was all, what is that noise? The shooting had just started. It was terrible, it really was. Everybody knew about the powers. You know, they didn't come in anywhere unless they were coming in to do something bad. So when you heard about the powers, then you just were like terrified, you know. Because they're bad, like. They're like the death squad.
Overhead, the huge Chinooks circle, and at night, the soldiers whisper beneath our windowsill. Prayers, bonfires, a gable end, a man bleeding by a cowshed. Second chances, sixth senses, a bomb set off by he who enters, a second bomb rigged to dispatch anyone who tries to help. Collusion, silence, tit for tat, bag checks and point-blank rain, the last bus hijacked and burnt, the gospel hall and the wages of sin, the called-in warning, an evacuation, a shivering, the all clear, the going in.
It was around the 9th of November 1974. Winston worked in Edmonton Barracks. It was the army base. And he had signed up to join the British Army, and he was going on the 11th of November. So he finished work on the Friday, and him and a friend, Joseph Slater, headed to the bar for drinks. Winston never returned home. So on the Saturday, my mum contacted his girlfriend thinking he had stayed with her, and she said no, she hadn't seen him. So come the Saturday evening, there was still no sign of him, so they went out looking, her, my father and the oldest brother, Robin, and they couldn't find him. And this went on all day Sunday. So short time after that, we were then told that Winston had been murdered. My father and my uncle went then and identified him, and it was Winston. Both of them had been taken away. They kept them in for 3 days, and then shot them and left them lying in Shares Mountain. They actually hooded them, like black bin bags over their heads, tied, and their hands tied and feet tied, and left lying in Shares Mountain.
Words have become inadequate to describe the crimes that are being committed in this community, and these two latest murders in Derry will sicken the entire community here. They're callous, they're brutal, and it seems to me rather hypocritical of an organisation that is consistently complaining about imprisonment without trial, that it finds no difficulty whatsoever in executing two young men without trial.
Professional IRA, yeah. They said they did it. First, we were told they were spies. Then we were told that they were in the UDR. And then we were told that it was a mistake. They'd shot the wrong people. As my mother always says, when they realised it was the wrong person, why did they not let them go? But obviously they couldn't. They'd seen too much at that stage, they had to keep them. We got an apology in the paper after they said it was mistaken identity. You apologise to somebody if you hit them or pushed them or something. You don't apologise for murdering somebody belonging to them. That's not acceptable. Nobody was ever brought to justice, nobody. They told us the case remains open because there's nobody ever been caught. And unless we can bring up new evidence, they can't do anything for us. If you don't know who they are, and they could be people you're talking to every day, but if you don't know them, there's nothing you can do about it.
They knew exactly what they did. They wreck the place. And what we feel is not forgiveness. Each slow funeral deposited another body in the loam. And we practiced ending properly, with ceremony, raising thousands of gravestones in row after row as we planted ourselves, our mothers and fathers, our sisters and daughters and brothers and sons, over and over, again in the darkness, where nothing would grow.
I have no hatred, but I don't forgive because of the life I had, and not only me, my brothers. I would love to come back again, start all over again as Sharon Cross, who didn't have a brother murdered, to see what my life would be like. Fear of remembering what I can't forget. Fear of forgetting what I can't imagine. Fear of the pub turned suddenly quiet. Fear of them bundling him into a van. Fear of the body found up on the mountain. Fear of the body they found in him. Fear of crying each night and forever. Fear of the grief. Fear of the memory. Fear of the day of his death in November. Fear of the life that was chosen for me. I cried every night of my life from I was 11 to I was a very big grown woman. I hated life, hated it. I walked into the house one day and heard the squealing. Went into the bedroom. My mother had set the bedroom on fire and herself in it. She wanted to die. To her, it didn't matter that there was 4 other children. One of them was dead, and that's all she cared about. Her pain was the biggest pain ever. We didn't matter. My father, he just drank. He was nasty even without the drink at this stage, but he was worse when he got the drink. I seen one morning my mother stand brushing her hair in the hall mirror, getting ready to go to work, and him coming and beating her face off it, busting her mouth, busting her nose. At another time, he knocked her teeth down her throat. But nobody cared about us after it. My mother didn't care, my father didn't care. We were left to our own devices. We weren't important. Wonson was important, but he was dead. Never changed. My father just drank more and more and more. My mother just took more and more tablets. If nobody cared about me, why would I care about me? And I just, for a long, long time, wasn't a nice person. I used to stand up back lanes, me and a couple of other girls, drinking bottles of Monday's wine. Used to stand in the local off licence and wait for somebody to go and bring us out this. I could drink it, go into the house, nobody knew I had it. And that was from I was 13. I used to cry in my bed at night and think I would love my mother to come and hug me and tell me she loved me. But it was only in bed at night I thought that. When I saw other families heading away, doing things together, I just was so jealous. I just wanted what everybody else had, a normal childhood.
Just hope to meet somebody and get married and be happy and have family. The only outlook I really would have had in life was to get married and be happy. We met when we were just 14. Childhood sweethearts, me and John. I lived above my aunt's chip shop, and he'd come in to have his fish wrapped. And if I was on, I would smile at him. My aunt had taken a real shine to him. And he started calling around the house, bringing a wee something, biscuits, flowers. I turned 14 on the Sunday.
And started in the shirt factory on the Monday.
I never regretted it. I was that happy. What was it called?
The Star Factory. You would have thought I was a millionaire. I was so happy. Honest to God, we both were.
We had a fantastic wedding. All families were there and friends. And it was in a place called the Melville Hotel. It's no longer there. It suffered in the Troubles too. And it's not there anymore. And it was a fantastic place. And then we had a week in Dublin, and just thought it was the greatest. Thought we were millionaires with a week's holidays in Dublin. And it was great. I remember him buying me a set of pearls. Thought it was a film star. And after getting a very special present, he just wanted a child. And then when we 7, we decided, well, that's enough now. We'll work hard and retire early. And we'll start in love. So, he just adored them. We ended up with 7 kids. We did. I just loved being a mum. I wrapped my life around them. And he adored them. My God, John adored the ground they walked on. And Derry was beautiful then. There was nothing, no ill feeling. I was the happiest person in the world. I hadn't a worry, I hadn't a care. I was so happy. I just couldn't believe life was going so well, and I had the happiest children. Gosh, but they were happy. You know, they wanted for nothing. They were happy in themselves. They loved their father to bits. He took over this bar, and it was doing amazing. He said he was retiring 40. I could never seen that, for he loved his work too much. But that's how hard he was working to make us all happy. It was a Monday, it was the 22nd of November. It was 1976. 6 of the children were in the swimming bath, and my eldest son was upstairs doing homework. And it was about 6:05, and the phone rang. I lifted the phone, the voice said, "Are you Marie Tolan?" "Yes." "Well, there's been a shooting in the Happy Land, and I think John's dead." Well, I collapsed. But my young fella upstairs heard the commotion, and he came down. And I can see him, he was in his bare feet. "Mum, what's wrong?" I said, "I think your dad has been shot." So he just flew out of the house and across the street, down on this woman, Beth. Come on quick, Daddy's been shot. Then they walked into John's bar and shot him. In the neck and chest and abdomen. Not one of them wearing a mask. And afterwards, when asked to give statements, not a single person in there could remember anything. 7 children left without a dad. I don't know what happened to a wild lot of people in this world that makes children suffer so hard. And I should have been working that night and I wasn't. And I know if I'd been there, I definitely would have stepped out to say something and the 2 would have probably been killed. So they would have been orphans. John was only days dead, and I looked at him and I thought, if any of them ever takes up a gun, I couldn't cope. So I sat them down and I said, by the way, I'm happy tonight that I'm your father's wife, and not the wife or the mother of the man pulled the trigger. And they went, what? I just, no. And my father idolised him. And 5 months after my father died of a brain hemorrhage. I don't think it helped him. So I lost my mother a year before, John November, and my father in April. Just was the saddest mass that ever was. And I thought, where do I go from here? I'll never forget my children. Oh, none of them were understood. They were gutted. And I thought, like, how do I get these children up and running again on my own? Because I was the mother that was doing things in the house, but he was the mainstay, and they adored him. Just remember thinking after the funeral, where do we go from here? I wasn't coping. I was collapsing. I was a kind of cloud floating round and round the house, and I couldn't rouse myself to ask for help. And then, maybe a couple of months after, I thought, have to end it, I can't. So I arranged to take tablets, and I thought, tonight's the night, I have to end it. And I took the tablets into my bedroom. By the way, it's only now my children know this. And I thought, I'll go around all the rooms and make sure they're all sleeping and they're happy. And opened the doors, and I looked and I thought, who's going to rear you? You didn't want to be born. John and me want so much. And I went down and I put the tablets in the back of the fire and lit them in the morning. And I never looked back after that. That way. I never, it was hard. But I would have never taken my life after that. I saw something one time on how the stars were formed, how you need a cloud to collapse down under its own weight. Well, it was like that.
Behind each story is the story of a mother. Behind each headline is a broken heart. Among the atrocities, in the wild, in the dark, it was the women keeping it together. Their children had been stolen from them, their husbands and their brothers killed. But life must be lived out right to the end, even if the losses seem intolerable. Even if the grief is this hard. Even if there's no way the pain can be endured.
I wonder why it had to happen. It doesn't do anybody any good, that. It doesn't do the woman any good who did it, and her daughter either. It doesn't do good to kill people. I always wanted children. I love children. Elsie was the eldest, and then there was Ruth, and then John, and then Timothy and Simon. That's the 5. So it seems a long time ago now. They're all grown up and away. Imagine you've no feelings left. It's like being packed in ice. You can't love and you can't hate. It's like you're cauterized. You're in a kind of in-between state. You get up and go through the motions, but you're on auto all the time. You're like stone, like a machine. She was so full of fun. Her and me went out down the street together. It was a laugh nearly all the time. I've never laughed as much in all my life as with her. She was so lively. It's nice to have those memories. You know, when you have a baby, how you take so much care of them, and you're scared of them if they're sick, and you're attending them, and they're everything to you, you know. That's the way it is with... She was the same. Such a good baby she was, too. Very easy looked after. And she had her older sister to play with them. And her brothers and all, they were all a happy family.
I let the baby fall. When Mommy came out and gave me a clout, I asked her what she was talking about. She gave me another to match the other over the garden wall.
It was in December 1982, and it was Ruth's birthday. She wanted to know if she should go out to the dropping well. There was a dance out there. She said to me, should I go or should I not? And I says, why not? It's your birthday. And then she got ready and away she went. That's the way I picture her walking away. I went out to the bin out the back and I heard the sirens going. And I thought, I wonder where that is. So we went to bed anyway.
My friend came to my door and said there'd been a bomb in Ballykelly, and that we both knew that Ruth had been there. So we headed out. Got there just minutes after the bomb went off, right up to the dropping well itself.
The regular Monday night disco had been in full swing in the pub, the soldiers' favourite haunt. The blast ripped through the disco at 11:15. At least 30 pounds of explosives, which blew out the walls and brought down the massive concrete roof. Many of the 150 soldiers and civilians in the disco were entombed, screaming in the rubble.
Started to make a few inquiries in the village with the local taxi man, and he had confirmed that he had dropped Ruth off there about an hour and a half before it. So we knew she was there. Went back home and spoke to my parents and told them that the bomb had been in the drop in Wellbar and that Ruth had been there.
The grim work of recovering the bodies at Ballykelly went on as teams of surgeons and the local hospital fought to save survivors with dreadful injuries.
We sat up all night at the fire, praying and talking, thinking about her, and ringing up places, my husband and Timothy and all ringing up to see where they could, and John and all trying to find where she was.
As the time went on and they spoke to hospitals and they realised that the people that were injured were being identified. You know, there's less and less hope. So myself and my fiancée then said we would go to Altnagalvin Hospital and see what we could find out.
He found her in the morgue, lying beside her shoulder on the floor, and they hadn't time to put the bits and bodies all up together. The bodies were lying here and there. People, it was awful. They wanted my husband and me to identify her, but Timothy didn't want us to do that, so I'm glad I didn't see her. I stood in the middle of the floor in the living room and I couldn't cry. I just stood there. A strange thing, you'd think I would stand and crying when it happened, but I couldn't cry. I was just sort of standing in a daze, but my son and my husband were crying, and they were in a terrible bad way, and I just stood looking at them. But I'll tell you, I cried plenty afterwards when I heard all.
Everything was happy and joyful in my life up to then, you know. I had no bad memories before that. And sort of life changed then, you know. My mother took the burden of it all nearly, you know, and she's taken braver steps than we have taken, you know. I admire her for that.
I had no way of getting to the world. I'd wash and get the boys their breakfast, but I couldn't smile. There was no spark, and years went by like that. I was wrecked. My life was wrecked. All our lives were wrecked. And if I talked to her, to Ruth, well, it's not as if the dead talk back.
I don't have a memory of my sister. When I think of her, I just see her there in the morgue, you know. I don't have a living memory of her.
Woman and her daughter came on with the bomb. I went to the court to see him. It was like Ruth and me and her daughter. How could they do that? They were put in jail, but they're out now. I don't know how I'd feel if I met them. I wouldn't like my husband to have met them anyway. That's the only thing. I could talk to them, but it would make me sorrowful, really, you know. It would make me sad looking at them. I'd probably cry if I met them. I wouldn't bother fighting with them or nothing like that, but how they changed so many lives. I don't know how I would face it. I might even meet them sometime. I don't know.
This was a day of shared grief among the three families who attended all of the funerals and for the whole community. At Limavady, not far from Ballykelly, the coffin of Ruth Dixon, who was murdered in the pub while celebrating her 24th birthday, was carried past silent onlookers braving the bitterly cold conditions.
You learn to pretend. You just keep on. You don't imagine a thing like that.
You don't imagine it could happen. And the death lives on in you. You wake to it each morning, and it starts again, starts a ripple on the surface of things distorting.
When I was growing up, when you went for a job, what school did you go to was one of the questions that were asked, and that wasn't because they wanted to know what school you went to, they wanted to know what religion you were, and that was based on whether you got the job or not. I grew up in Belfast in a predominantly Catholic area, and I come from a family of 11 children. You just grew up knowing that there was places that you could go and places that you couldn't go, and places where you felt safe and places where you didn't feel safe. When John, my son, was about 3 or 4, he was out playing in the street. When he came in, I asked him what he had been doing. And he said, well, I had great fun. We were throwing stones at the soldiers. So I decided that we would move on and bring them to where I thought would be a safer place. So the children grew up mixing with both sides of the community, Catholic and Protestant.
Every weekend, the men took their oldest sons to football match on a Sunday, and John came with me every Sunday to play football for 4 years. And when he went back into school on the Monday morning, the school teacher used to say to the boys, right, I want you to do me a composition of what you've done over the weekend. And John's composition was always about out with his daddy playing football. And he got top marks for that, you know. Sometimes I told John we were proud of him, but I didn't tell him enough how much we were proud of him, you know.
Sometimes when Pat talks about him, he has him on a pedestal, and I go, did you forget the time that John did that? And did you forget the time that he done that? He was a wee shite at times. Oh, sorry about the language, but you know what I mean. You know, you forget all these things and you're kind of putting him up there, you know. He's an ordinary kid, you know. You know, even when your children grow up, you're still kind of looking out for them all the time. But I was a wee bit naive then, and I was thinking, well, 18, 19, they can look after themselves, have become independent, you know, that way. So I think basically he was really just having a good time at that stage and wasn't really thinking too much about the future.
John was going out around 6 o'clock-ish. He came in to the sitting room. Linda and I were sitting watching television. He came in all dressed up. Well, do you think I'm going to get a girl tonight? Aye, certainly. You get a girl tonight. All right, John, certainly. And away he went.
And he said, Mummy, I might not even be home tonight. You know, everybody's out too late and might just stay out. So the doorbell rang about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I opened the door, and there's 2 people standing at the door, and said, do you have a son? Is he out? And I said, yeah.
And this man and woman told us that there was a body up top of the street, top of the Lansdowne Road, and They were round the whole neighbourhood to see was there all the boys in, or was there anybody missing. And we told them, well, John's staying out tonight, he's staying in his mate's house.
Anyhow, they took Pat away, and one of the neighbours came in and she says, "Don't worry, Linda, it could be anybody, sure. There's so many of them all out tonight. They're just checking the houses." And I said, "But why did they take Pat away?"
So we went and identified him, and unfortunately it was John, when we were hoping that it wasn't John.
John Joseph Malloy was making his way home down Lansdowne Road off the Antrim Road soon after midnight last night, but he never got there. There was a confrontation and he was stabbed. He collapsed on the pavement and died before reaching hospital.
My reaction was, I grabbed him by the hair because I was angry that he had walked down the footpath, and that down the wrist was going through my mind. And then my hand was full of blood whenever I took my hand away, and I said, what's this? And the girl says, that's one of the stab wounds was on his head. Right. So after saying a wee prayer there, standing over him, I just couldn't, I had to move, I had to go, and back to the house again.
I think that was just the longest hour of my life, and he came back and I just looked at his face and I just knew. And they just said he was found on the Lansdowne Road. He had been stabbed. And he was dead. The day after John was killed, we went to Mass. You know, you're going through the Our Father and the forgiveness thing, and you think, well, but my religion, you know, teaches me that I have to forgive, you know. But it doesn't stop you from being angry either, you know. But all I could think of was, this may sound stupid, but if somebody came to my door and told me that John had killed somebody, how would I feel as a mother? I would have to forgive my own child. I don't know. It's just wrong, but I don't have hate in my heart, like.
I went to cemetery every other day, maybe as many as 3 or 4 times a week. In the early days of John's murder, I went up so that I could just cry, because I didn't like crying in front of my kids. I had to be strong for them.
I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I could just see his face. It just took ages to realise that he was never coming back, you know. So... I'd wake at 5 and get up to walk for hours, just trying to walk it off. I'd walk up to the castle grounds because it felt like John somehow was still there. In the grass, the big trees, in the wind moving in the leaves. In the wrong place at the wrong time, the police said. And that left me riled. 200 yards from his own house. How could he be in the wrong place? And he's all of 18 years old. What's a wrong time for him to come home? I would have a very strong faith, but I don't have much hope. My pain is my pain. People get away with stuff they shouldn't be getting away with. Oh, I could give you details. I could name names. So the person who has killed my son is out there living his life, walking the streets, doing whatever he wants to do, and we've had no justice and no closure.
I know the murder of John Malloy, and the police know the murder of John Malloy too, and he's still out there. They killed John late one night while he was walking home. Killed him because of his religion and because he was alone. We were told the name of the bastard who stabbed him, but he never was arrested. He never went to prison. Should he wonder if I forgive him? No, I don't forgive him. And as for his friends who watched it happening, I'd ask them, did you end up having children of your own? And how would you feel if this was done to one of them? How could you not have tried to help a dying man? How could you not have got help or rang someone? Just to leave him lying there on the pavement, bleeding. I hope you never know what it is to lose a son. There's not a day goes past that I don't think of John. There's not a day goes past that I don't miss him.
Omerta, there's that word the mob have. You take it to the grave. No one tells the truth. Not one. They say justice just doesn't rhyme with peace. So no, you can't have both. Us left, the right, the wronged, are told to hold our tongues. A blanket silence rules the factories and wine bars, the cattle marts and car parks, our segregated schools. We're given ink and time, history falls into line, aye, and no one tells the truth. They repeat that justice just doesn't rhyme with peace, so no, you can't have both.
After all that trauma and that heartbreak that we've been through, my mother was able to make our lives normal, you know, and brought normality and happiness back into the home, you know. She was very strong, you know, she was great, like.
Hatred doesn't harm the person that you hate. It just harms you. It's you that's going to get all twisted up. That's what's happening to these children. What kind of citizens are they going to be? Even the troubles were over. What's Derry going to be like with these young fellas when they grow up now, or these young children? Girls are as bad. These are going to be mothers and fellas, you know, of the future. And if they have this hatred on them, what in God's name is going to happen to them? Terrible.
My mother used to say to us, no, they're going to come forward. You know, no man could love with that in their conscience, what they done. You know, that they would leave a woman with 9 weans and not stand up and say, no, I done that. You know, it's not the right thing to do. She always thought they would have come forward, but they never did.
What has it achieved? Heartache. There's not a family in Northern Ireland hasn't got issues through the Troubles. Either losing a loved one or somebody involved. It brings nothing, only heartache, and destroys every family. I know what I suffered and our family suffered. I would not want anybody in this world to do it, to go through that life. Men that are doing it need to be living in a house with a family who have suffered and live with them to see what they choose to do what they do then at the end of it. Because I know as a woman, and I know from my brother's point of views, there's not one would inflict that pain on anybody on this earth, because that pain's unbearable. I would love to come back and start over again. I would love to come back and not shoulder this pain. I would love to know what my life might have been like. I would love to have lived in the warmth and sunlight. My mother, last year, she was diagnosed with stomach cancer and was told she had 6 months. And I moved in with her because it was my duty. I'm her daughter, it's up to me to do this. So I moved in and I spent 7 months with her and I slept in the bed beside her every night. So, in my opinion, I got my childhood. But I was a grown woman at 54. But I only got it last year. Because those 7 months, lying in that bed, I got everything I ever wanted. In the end, though, you know, it turned out all right. I met the man who was the love of my life. He showed me what love was and took care of the children and me. And that was enough.
You have to tell people how bad and how hard it was. You know, it's great to talk about it now and know we can talk and tell how innocent he was. He was a most innocent person.
A kind of permanent soft roar at our backs, like the Atlantic making landfall on the black rocks below, or the energetic westerlies at large tonight and rounding in the tangled silhouetted leaves. The chorus of the dead is 3,000 strong, a consonance of voices that continues on like nothing happened, like nothing could happen again and again. All the banter and the pillow talk and arguments, the whining and the winding up, the prayers and gossip, the white hiss of a universe beginning over. It's after song.
I get down at times, but I get up again. I think how jolly she was, and she wouldn't like me to be like that at all.
A few years after it, I married again, but this man I'm married to now, his sister, was married to John's brother. So we always met up and we always knew one another. And he was a single fella, he had no family, out of marriage or anything, and started to come down to visit my boys and take one on fishing. And then we started to go out together, and he said to me, I'd love to marry you and help you to rear them children. I thought, single fella, 7 youngsters, don't think so. It was amazing. It was amazing. So life started to take a good turn then.
The list of loss, a funeral song, argument and plea, register of murder, inventory of grief, all these sorry details from death's handbook. But turning to the next phase of the account to check on the concluding step, we find the last page left intentionally blank. What does peace require? What does it guarantee? Convention means beating swords to ploughshares, making sickles from the spears, or that we go from house to house and set a single white rose on each doorstep and draw in chalk a circle on each door to mark our hope that no one is forgotten anymore, no one afraid, no one in danger. Do the walls rapidly dissolve? Does barbed wire roll itself back up into a neat coil? Do the buildings spring from rubble? What is involved after the last bomb's gone off? The last gun shot? After the last car's burnt out, the last body buried? Someone has to think about the long slog of clearing up.
He was an innocent man, and the state protected the police that killed him and didn't protect us. We were just left to our own devices, like, how to deal with it ourselves, you know? So it's very important that people know the story that really happened, like. I think we all suffer mentally because of it. Even the very fact some of us don't even want to talk about it anymore. You know, it's buried in some of us, but we need to talk about it. You know, we've all loved our lives. We've got married, we've worked. We have children and grandchildren, so we have moved on. But, you know, this story is still there in the background that has to be told, and I would like it dealt with now and put to bed now so that my children or grandchildren don't have to do it. Because, you know, just because it's not dealt with today or tomorrow doesn't mean it's ever going to go away, because it won't. You know, it'll keep raising its head.
And what's it for? What? For what? Who cares whether you live in Northern Ireland or the South of Ireland or what the hell odds? If you can live in peace, live in it.